The twin suns of Valdris Prime painted the crystalline mountains in shades of amber, and rose as Naya Torrens adjusted her field scanner for the third time that morning. 6 months into her xenobotany assignment, she had grown to love the planets. Ethereal beauty, the way bioluminescent moss traced patterns across purple stone. How the wind sang through formations that looked like frozen music. Her research station, Phoenix Outpost, sat nestled in a valley where 3 ecosystems converged, creating a botanical paradise that kept her busy from dawn to dusk. Another day in paradise, she murmured to herself, carefully extracting a sample of silvery lichen that pulsed with its own inner light. The plant responded to her touch by brightening, as if acknowledging her presence. Everything on Valdris seemed more alive than Earth's flora, more connected to some invisible network of energy that she was only beginning to understand. The screech of tortured metal shattered the morning tranquility. Naya spun toward the sound, her scanner tumbling. From nerveless fingers, a ship unlike anything in the colonial fleet carved a burning trajectory across the pristine sky, before slamming into the hillside barely half a kilometer away. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground that knocked her to her knees, and when the dust settled, a column of black smoke rose like a funeral pyre against the alien sky. Her training as a frontier researcher kicked in immediately. First protocol, assess immediate danger. Second protocol, report to base command. Third protocol, maintain safe distance from unknown contacts. But as Naya stared at the smoking wreckage, she found herself thinking not of protocols but of the being who might be dying inside that twisted metal tomb. The ship was beautiful even in destruction. Its hull gleamed with an opalescent sheen that shifted colors like oil on water, and its design spoke of a civilization that valued both function and artistry. Definitely not human construction, which meant she was looking at first contact with an alien species, something that should have terrified her, but instead filled her with overwhelming curiosity. The hull breach became visible as she approached, a jagged wound in the ship's side that leaked strange gases into Valdris's atmosphere. Naya pulled her emergency respirator from her pack. Though her scanner indicated the alien atmosphere wasn't immediately toxic to humans, through the breach, she could see the ship's interior, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed grown rather than manufactured. Then she saw him. The being lay crumpled against what might have been a control console, and Naya's breath caught in her throat. He was humanoid but unmistakably alien, tall and lean with skin that held an otherworldly pallor shot through with veins of silver. His hair was the color of starlight, falling in waves around a face that was angular and aristocratic. Most striking were the elegant markings that traced his skin, not tattoos, but natural patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living art. He was also bleeding profusely from a gash across his chest. Naya's medical training warred with every survival instinct she possessed. This being could be hostile, could carry diseases that would wipe out the small research outpost, could be the advanced scout for an invasion fleet. But as she watched his chest rise and fall in obvious distress, she found herself moving forward rather than back. Up close, she could see that his blood was the color of liquid mercury, and his breathing was shallow and irregular. The clothing he wore was form-fitting and made from some material that seemed to react to light, shifting between deep blue and violet. Decorative elements suggested he was someone of importance, not just any alien, but perhaps a leader or explorer. From his people. Okay, she said aloud, needing to hear her own voice in the alien ship's silence. Standard trauma protocol. Stop the bleeding, stabilize, then figure out the rest. She opened her medical kit and began working with steady hands. Though her heart hammered against her ribs, the alien's skin was warm to the touch, almost fever hot, and she could feel the rapid flutter of what might be a heartbeat beneath her fingertips. His bone structure felt similar to human, but more delicate, as if his people had evolved under lighter gravity. As she cleaned the wound with antiseptic, the alien's eyes snapped open. Naya froze, her hands still pressed against his chest. His eyes were the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, large and luminous, colored like amethysts with flecks of silver that seemed to catch and hold light. For several heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then his hand shot up, gripping her wrist with surprising strength despite his injuries. His lips parted, revealing teeth that were slightly pointed, and he made a sound deep in his throat, something between a question and a warning. The language was unlike anything Naya had ever heard, musical and flowing like water over stones. "Easy," she said softly, not trying to pull away from his grip. "I'm trying to help you." The alien's head tilted slightly, his grip loosening, but not releasing. His eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent, as if he could see straight through to her soul. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker, but the tone was less threatening. "I don't understand your words," Naya said, gesturing slowly to her medical supplies and then to his wound. "But you're hurt. Please let me help." Something in her tone or manner seemed to reach him. His grip on her wrist relaxed completely, though his eyes never left her face. When she carefully returned to cleaning his wound, he tensed but didn't stop her. The injury was deep, but not life-threatening if properly treated, and Naya found herself fascinated by the differences in his physiology. His blood clotted differently than human blood, and his skin seemed to have some natural healing properties that were already beginning to close. The smaller cuts. "There," she said when she had sealed the wound with medical adhesive. "That should hold until I can get you somewhere with proper medical facilities." The alien struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his injury. Naya instinctively reached out to steady him, her hand landing on his shoulder. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, not electric, but something deeper and more primal. Their eyes met again, and this time Naya saw something in his gaze that made her pulse quicken. Beneath the obvious pain and confusion was a flicker of something else, curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of the kindness she had shown. He placed his hand over his heart and spoke a single word. That sounded like music. "Kes," understanding flooded through her. "Your name," she said, pressing her own hand to her chest. "Naya, Naya," he repeated, and her name sounded like poetry in his accented voice. As the alien suns climbed higher in the sky, Naya helped Kes to his feet, supporting his weight as they began the slow journey back to Phoenix Outpost. She had no idea what protocols she was breaking, what danger she might be inviting into her small sanctuary. All she knew was that when she had looked into those amethyst eyes, she had seen not a monster or a threat, but a being in need of help. And something in her had responded to that need in a way that went far beyond mere humanitarian duty. The research station came into view as they crested the final hill, its solar collectors gleaming like metal flowers in the alien sunlight. Kes paused, studying the human construction with obvious interest. When he looked at her questioningly, Naya simply smiled. "Welcome to my world," she said softly. As they approached the airlock, Naya couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. In helping this beautiful, mysterious being, she had set in motion events that would change not just her life, but the destiny of two entire civilizations. The stars had brought them together across the vast emptiness of space. Now it remained to be seen what would grow from this first, tentative contact between human and alien hearts. "Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses." The medical bay at Phoenix Outpost had never been designed for someone of Kes's height and alien physiology. Naya watched him eye the human-sized equipment with what she was beginning to recognize as his people's equivalent of skepticism, a slight narrowing of those remarkable amethyst eyes and a barely perceptible tilt of his head. The journey back to the station had taken nearly 2 hours, with frequent stops to let him rest, and she could see exhaustion written in every line of his elegant frame. "This is going to be awkward," she admitted, gesturing to the examination table that would clearly be too short for his 7-foot frame. "But I need to properly treat your wounds." Kes nodded, though she could see tension in his shoulders. During their slow trek to the station, he had begun to pick up basic words of standard colonial, his quick intelligence evident in how rapidly he absorbed new concepts. His accent made every word sound like music, transforming even simple phrases into something beautiful. "Your healing place," he said carefully, his voice carrying that same melodious quality that made her pulse flutter. "It is small." Naya couldn't help but smile. Most things in human space are built for humans. We don't usually plan for visitors who are quite so impressive. Something in her tone made Kess's eyes brighten with what might have been amusement. As she moved to gather supplies from the medical cabinets, she was acutely aware of his gaze following her every movement. When she turned back, he had managed to remove his upper garment, revealing a torso that made her breath catch in her throat. His skin was the color of moonlight on water, pale but with an inner luminescence that seemed to pulse gently with his heartbeat. The silver vining she had noticed earlier traced elegant patterns across his chest and shoulders, not random markings, but deliberate designs that spoke of both beauty and meaning. His build was lean but powerful, clearly adapted for speed and agility rather than brute strength. "Please lie down," she said, patting the examination table while trying to keep her voice professional. Kess complied, though the table was indeed too short for his frame. His legs hung over the edge, and Naya had to adjust the height to reach him properly. As she began cleaning his wound more thoroughly, she noticed him tense whenever she touched certain areas of his skin. "Does this hurt?" she asked, pausing with the antiseptic applicator. "No," he replied, but his accent made the word uncertain. "It is different. Your touch is not like Zephyrian healers." "Different how?" Naya found herself genuinely curious about his people's medical practices. Kess seemed to struggle with the words. "Gentle. Our healers are efficient, not gentle. They repair damage and leave. You." He paused, those amethyst eyes studying her face intently. "You touch as if you care about pain." The simple observation hit Naya harder than she expected. "I do care. That's what healers should do, isn't it? Care about the people they're helping?" "Not among my people," Kess said softly. "Weakness is not tolerated. Pain is expected to be endured in silence." As Naya worked, she found herself fascinated by the alien physiology beneath her hands. His skin was slightly tougher than human skin, but still vulnerable to cuts and scrapes. His temperature ran higher than human normal, but not dangerously so. Most intriguingly, the silver vining seemed to pulse more brightly when she touched him, as if responding to contact. "How long have your people known about humans?" she asked, trying to keep him talking while she applied a proper dermal seal. "Many cycles," he replied. "We have watched your ships, studied your settlements from a distance, but we do not interact until now." "Why not?" Kess was quiet for a moment. "Because we believed humans were primitives, violent, dangerous to approach." Naya paused in her work, looking up at his face. "And what do you believe now?" Those remarkable eyes met hers, and she saw something in their depths that made her heart skip. "Now I think we may have been wrong about many things." The intensity of his gaze made Naya suddenly aware of how close she was standing, how her hands were moving across his skin as she worked. She cleared her throat and stepped back, but Kess caught her wrist gently. "Wait," he said. "There's another injury." Naya looked at him questioningly. "Where?" Instead of answering, Kess turned slightly, revealing his back. Naya gasped. A series of deep lacerations ran from his shoulder blade toward his spine, probably from debris during the crash, but what made her breath catch was where the wounds were positioned, dangerously close to the base of his neck, where his silver-white hair fell like a cascade of starlight. "I could not reach," he said simply, "and I cannot ask you to. Of course I can treat them," Naya said, moving around the table. "Why would you think I couldn't?" Kess's entire body went rigid. "Because you would have to touch the soul place." "The what?" "Where the essence connects to the body." Kess's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "It is sacred among my people. Forbidden to touch without what? Without bonding. Without permission of the heart." Naya felt her own heart skip a beat. She was beginning to understand that this was like asking her to touch something intensely intimate, something that crossed cultural boundaries she hadn't even known existed. "I won't do anything you're not comfortable with," she said carefully. "But these wounds need treatment, or they could become infected." Kess was silent for a long moment. Naya could see the internal struggle playing out in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Finally, he spoke without turning around. "If I give permission, what does it mean to your people?" Naya considered the question seriously. "It means I'm a healer helping someone who's hurt. Nothing more, nothing less. And to my people," Kess's Voice was so quiet she had to strain to hear him. It would mean you are trusted completely. Without reservation, it would mean. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. It would mean recognition of bond potential. The weight of what he was saying settled over Naya like a blanket. This wasn't just about medical treatment anymore. This was about trust on a level she had never encountered, about crossing cultural lines that could change everything between them. "Do you trust me?" she asked softly. For a moment, she thought he might not answer. Then, slowly, Kes nodded. "Then I'll be very careful," she promised. Naya gathered her supplies and moved to stand behind him. His hair was even more beautiful. Up close, each strand seemed to hold its own light, and she could see that what she had taken for silver threads were actually natural fibers that pulsed gently with some kind of bioelectric energy. "I'm going to move your hair," she said softly. "Is that all right?" Kes's shoulders tensed, but he nodded. Naya carefully lifted the flowing mass of his hair, marveling at its silky texture. As she moved it aside, her fingertips accidentally brushed the base of his neck. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Kes's entire body went rigid, his breath catching audibly. But more than that, Naya felt something, a shock that ran through her own system like touching a live wire. But it wasn't pain, it was connection, pure and electric, as if some barrier between them had suddenly dissolved. "I'm sorry," she whispered, starting to pull her hand away. "No," Kes said quickly, his voice rough with emotion. "Don't stop. Please." Naya froze, her hand still resting lightly at the base of his neck. She could feel his pulse beneath her fingertips, rapid and strong. The skin there was incredibly soft, almost hypersensitive to touch. More than that, she could feel something else, a warmth that seemed to flow between them. A sense of connection she had never experienced with another being. "Is this what you meant?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Kes breathed. "This is the soul place, where the beings can truly touch." For a moment, Naya simply stood there, her hand on his neck, feeling the extraordinary intimacy of the contact. This was more than treating a patient, this was crossing into territory she had never imagined existed. But Kes had given his permission, had trusted her with something sacred to his people. "I'll be gentle," she promised again, and began cleaning the wounds with careful, reverent touches. As she worked, Naya became aware of subtle changes in Kes's breathing, the way he seemed to relax under her touch despite the obvious significance of what was happening. When she finished treating the wounds and began to move her hand away, he made a soft sound that might have been disappointment. "Thank you," he said when she stepped back, his voice carrying layers of meaning she was only beginning to understand. "For everything." Naya looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his amethyst eyes that made her heart race. "You're welcome," she replied, but the words felt inadequate for what had just passed between them. As Kes carefully put his shirt back on, Naya busied herself with cleaning up the medical supplies, but she could still feel the warmth of his skin under her fingertips, still hear the catch in his breathing when she had touched that sacred place. At the base of his neck, something had changed between them in those moments, something that went far beyond doctor and patient, far beyond human and alien, something that both frightened and thrilled her in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. When she finally looked up, Kes was watching her with an expression of wonder and something else, something that looked very much like the beginning of love. "Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses." Vera Blackstone's transport kicked up a cloud of crystalline dust as it settled onto the landing pad at Phoenix Outpost, 2 days ahead of schedule. Her supply run to the orbital station had been cut short when the bureaucrats decided they needed to reassess resource allocation, corporate speak for budget cuts. She was tired, irritated, and looking forward to complaining to Naya about the endless incompetence of Colonial administration over a bottle of the synthetic whiskey she'd managed to smuggle back. What she wasn't expecting was to find an alien warrior sitting at her breakfast table. Vera stood frozen in the doorway of the common area, her duffel bag sliding from nerveless fingers to hit the floor with a dull thud. The being at the table was unmistakably not human, tall even while seated, with pale skin marked by flowing silver patterns and hair the color of starlight. He was eating from one of their standard meal packs with obvious difficulty. clearly unaccustomed to human utensils. Most shocking of all, Naya sat across from him, chatting as if sharing breakfast with an alien was the most natural thing in the universe. And that's why we use the crystalline formations to amplify our communication signals, Naya was saying, gesturing animatedly. The mineral structure acts like a natural relay network. The alien, because what else could he be, nodded thoughtfully and replied in accented but clear standard colonial, on Zephyros. We use living crystal networks. They grow and adapt to carry different frequencies. Fascinating. I'd love to study. Naya looked up and saw Vera standing in the doorway. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, guilt, and finally resignation. "Oh, Vera, you're early." "Clearly not early enough," Vera said, her voice tight with controlled panic. Her hand moved instinctively toward the emergency beacon on her belt before she caught herself. "Naya, what the hell is going on here?" The alien rose smoothly from his chair, and Vera was struck by just how imposing he was. Nearly 7 feet tall, with a lean but powerful build and an aristocratic bearing that screamed nobility or military rank. When he spoke, his voice was calm and melodious. "I am Kes Thorn of Zephyros. Your friend Naya saved my life when my ship crashed." "Crashed?" Vera repeated numbly. "Your ship? An alien ship crashed here, and you didn't think to mention it in any of your reports." Naya stood as well, moving slightly closer to Kes in what might have been an unconscious protective gesture. "Vera, please, let me explain." "Explain?" Vera's voice rose an octave. "Naya, this is first contact with an alien species. There are protocols, procedures, entire government departments that handle this kind of thing. You can't just invite him for breakfast." "He was dying," Naya said firmly. "What was I supposed to do? Let him bleed out while I filed reports?" Vera ran her hands through her short brown hair, trying to process what she was seeing. As the station's communications specialist and Naya's research partner, she was supposed to be the practical one, the one who thought things through. Right now, she felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. "Okay, let's assume for a moment that harboring an alien isn't going to get us court-martialed or worse. How long has he been here?" 3 days. Naya admitted. 3 days. Vera sat down heavily in the nearest chair. 3 days of unauthorized alien contact. And in that time you've what? Taught him standard colonial and invited him to raid our food supplies. "Actually," Kes interjected, his tone carrying what might have been amusement, "I already knew your language. My people have been studying human communications for some time." That brought Vera up short. "Studying us? For how long?" "Many cycles. Your species is interesting to us. Interesting enough to spy on us, apparently." Vera's natural suspicion was warring with her scientific curiosity. As a xenobiologist herself, she understood the incredible significance of what was happening. As someone responsible for station security, she was terrified. Naya moved to sit beside Kes, and Vera didn't miss the way her friend's hand briefly touched his arm, a gesture of comfort and support that spoke of a relationship that had developed beyond mere medical necessity. "Vera," Naya said carefully, "there's something else you need to know. Please tell me you haven't been broadcasting our location to his mothership." "No, nothing like that. It's..." Naya glanced at Kes, who nodded encouragingly. "It's personal." Vera felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Personal how?" Instead of answering directly, Naya looked at Kes again. Some silent communication passed between them, and then Kes spoke. "Among my people, there is a concept called soul recognition. When two beings find that their essences complement each other perfectly, despite all barriers of species or culture." "Oh, no," Vera breathed, understanding flooding through her. "Naya, please tell me you haven't." "I've fallen in love with him," Naya said simply. "And he with me." Vera stared at her best friend, the woman she'd worked alongside for 2 years, and saw a happiness in Naya's eyes that she'd never seen before. It was radiant and transformative, but it was also potentially catastrophic. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Vera asked quietly. "The complications this creates? If Colonial Command finds out, they'll assume you've been compromised, turned against your own species. They'll probably arrest you both." "I know the risks," Naya said. But Vera, you don't understand what this means. This could change everything between our species. It could mean peace instead of suspicion, cooperation instead of fear, or it could mean war. Vera countered. What happens when his people come looking for him? When they find him here with us? Kess's expression darkened slightly. My people believe I am dead. They will not come looking unless I signal them. And will you signal them? Kess looked at Naya, and Vera saw something pass between them that made her chest tighten with a mixture of envy and terror. I do not know. My duty is to my people, but my heart. He touched Naya's hand gently. My heart has found something I never expected to find. Vera stood abruptly and began pacing the small common area. This is insane. You're talking about abandoning your entire civilization for someone you've known for 3 days. Not abandoning, Kess said firmly. Perhaps bridging, perhaps showing both our peoples that understanding is possible. That's a beautiful sentiment, Vera said, but you're both being incredibly naive. Love doesn't conquer politics or centuries of mistrust. And what happens when she was interrupted by the soft chime of an incoming communication? All 3 of them froze as the station's main console activated, displaying an emergency priority message from Colonial Command. Phoenix Outpost, this is Fleet Command. We have detected unauthorized energy signatures in your sector. Report any unusual activity immediately. Unknown vessels may be operating in your area. Maintain elevated alert status until further notice. Vera felt the blood drain from her face. Energy signatures. They've detected his ship. Kess was already moving toward the console. May I? When Vera nodded numbly, he quickly accessed the sensor readings with a familiarity that spoke of advanced technical knowledge. His expression grew increasingly grim as he studied the data. These readings, he said finally, they are not from my ship alone. There are other Zephyrian vessels in this system. Your people? Naya asked. No. Kess's voice was tight with concern. These signatures belong to the Crimson Fleet pirates and raiders who prey on both our peoples. If they have detected my presence here, they'll come to investigate. Vera finished. How long do we have? Kess studied the readings more carefully. Perhaps 12 hours, maybe less if they decide to approach directly rather than scout first. Vera felt the situation spiraling completely out of control. Wonderful. So now we have Colonial Fleet closing in from one side and alien pirates from the other, all while harboring an unauthorized alien contact and dealing with what is apparently an interspecies love affair. She looked at Naya and Kess, seeing the way they instinctively moved closer together in the face of danger. You know, when I signed up for frontier research, nobody mentioned that the job would include potential diplomatic incidents and alien romance novels. Despite the gravity of the situation, Kess actually smiled. Your friend has a gift for seeing the absurdity in chaos. It's a survival trait in my line of work, Vera said dryly. Then her expression grew serious. But we need to make some decisions. And fast. Kess, can you contact your people? The legitimate ones, not the pirates. Yes, but doing so would reveal my location to everyone monitoring Zephyrian communications frequencies, including the pirates. Yes, Vera looked between Naya and Kess, seeing the trust and affection that had grown between them in just 3 short days. Against all her training and better judgment, she found herself believing in what they had found together. Okay, she said finally. Here's what we're going to do, Naya. You and I are going to figure out how to make this look like a legitimate first contact scenario. Kess, you're going to help us understand exactly what we're dealing with regarding these Crimson Fleet pirates, and all of us are going to pray that love really can work miracles. As alarms began to sound in the distance and the first signs of approaching ships appeared on their sensors, Vera realized that their quiet research station was about to become ground zero for the most important diplomatic event in human history. She just hoped they would all survive to see how it. The sleek Zephyrian battle cruiser Stellar Wind cut through space like a silver blade, its captain standing rigid on the command deck as sensor readings confirmed his worst fears. Joran Vex had the same pale, luminescent skin as his younger brother, the same silver vein patterns that marked their noble bloodline. But where Kess carried himself with scholarly grace, Joran was all sharp edges and controlled fury. Confirmed life signs. Captain, reported his sensor operator. A young Zephyrian female whose voice trembled slightly. The energy signature matches Prince Kess's personal craft. Prince. The title still felt strange, even after 3 cycles since their father's death had elevated Kess from military commander to heir of House Thorn. Joran had gladly remained a fleet captain, preferring the clarity of space combat to the political intricacies of court life. But Kess was his responsibility now, his brother and his prince, and he had failed to protect him. Any response to our hails? Joran asked, though he knew the answer. They had been broadcasting on all Zephyrian frequencies for 2 days without receiving so much as an acknowledgement. Nothing, sir. The craft appears to be powered down. Possibly crashed. Joran's jaw tightened. The Crimson Fleet had been raiding this sector for months, preying on both Zephyrian and human shipping with equal ruthlessness. If they had captured or killed Kess, the consequences would be catastrophic. House Thorn was one of the most powerful, noble families on Zephyros, and Kess's death would demand vengeance that could escalate into full-scale war with whoever was responsible. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human research station on the planet below. Human. Joran turned sharply. The briefing materials had mentioned a small colonial outpost in this system, but it had been deemed irrelevant to their search mission. What are they saying? They're requesting permission to speak with you directly, sir. They claim to have information about Prince Kess. The bridge fell silent. Every eye was on Joran as he processed this unexpected development. Humans claiming to have information about his brother could mean only a few things, none of them good. Put them through, he said finally. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing 3 figures in what appeared to be the station's communication center. 2 humans, one with dark hair pulled back severely, the other a blonde woman who looked nervous but determined. Between them stood a figure that made Joran's breath catch in his throat. Kess, alive, apparently uninjured, and standing far too close to the human females for Joran's comfort. Brother, Kess said, his voice carrying across the void with its familiar musical cadence. I greet you in peace, Kess. Joran's voice was tight with relief and growing suspicion. Are you injured? Are you being held against your will? I am well, Kess replied. And I am here by choice. The blonde human stepped forward slightly, and Joran noticed how Kess's posture shifted to subtly protect her. Captain Vex, I'm Naya, Torrens, xenobotanist at Phoenix Outpost. Your brother crashed here several days ago. We've been providing medical assistance. Medical assistance. Joran's eyes narrowed as he studied the scene before him. Something was wrong here. Something his military training was screaming warnings about. And why has he not signaled for rescue? Kess answered before either human could speak. Because I have discovered something that changes everything we believed about humans, Joran. Something that could reshape the relationship between our peoples. The only thing I see, Joran said coldly, is my brother standing in what appears to be a human facility, possibly compromised by alien influence or coercion. The dark-haired human Vera, according to the briefing data now scrolling across. His tactical display stepped forward with obvious irritation. Captain, with respect, no one is being coerced here. Your brother was dying when we found him. We saved his life. And what do you expect in return for this kindness? It was Naya who answered, and something in her voice made Joran pay closer attention. We expect nothing except the chance to prove that our species don't have to be enemies. Joran studied her more carefully. There was something in the way she held herself, the way she looked at Kess, that triggered alarm bells in his mind. You speak of our species as if you have some personal investment in their relationship. I do, Naya said simply. I love your brother, and he loves me. The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Joran heard several of his crew members gasp, and he felt his own world tilt sideways. Love. Between a Zephyrian prince and a human, it was impossible, unthinkable, and potentially catastrophic for both civilizations. Kess, Joran said, his voice deadly quiet. Tell me she is mistaken. For a moment, Kess didn't answer. Then he moved to stand directly beside Naya, his hand coming up to rest gently on her shoulder in a gesture that spoke of intimacy and protection. She speaks truth, brother. I have found my soul match in Nia Torrens. She is my chosen bondmate. The bridge erupted in shocked murmurs. Bondmate, the most sacred relationship in Zephyrian culture. A connection that transcended mere marriage or political alliance. To claim such a bond with an alien, you have lost your mind, Joran said. Flatly, this human has clearly used some form of mental manipulation. Perhaps alien pheromones or psychological techniques. You will return to the ship immediately for medical evaluation and decontamination. I will not, Kes replied, his voice carrying the authority of his royal birth. And I am not compromised. Joran, I am more clear-minded than I have ever been. In my life, Joran felt his carefully controlled anger beginning to slip. Clear-minded? You're talking about bonding with an alien primitive. Do you have any idea what this would mean for House Thorn? For Zephyros? The scandal alone the scandal, interrupted a new voice, would be the least of your problems. Joran spun toward his tactical officer, who was staring at his console with growing alarm. Captain, we have multiple contacts incoming. Crimson Fleet raiders. At least 6 ships. Damn, Joran's attention snapped back to the immediate threat. Whatever madness had overcome his brother would have to wait. Time to intercept. 14 minutes. Sir, on the view screen, he could see the humans exchanging worried glances. Vera spoke first. Captain, we need to evacuate the station. Our defenses can't handle that kind of firepower. Agreed, Joran said grimly. We'll transport you to the stellar wind until the threat is neutralized. No. Kes's voice was firm. Joran, this is our chance to prove that cooperation between our peoples is possible. Let us fight together against a common enemy. Absolutely not. I will not risk human lives in Zephyrian military operations, and I will not abandon the people. Who saved my life? Kes countered. These women are under my protection now, brother. That makes them Zephyrian nobility by bond right. Joran stared at his brother, seeing the absolute determination in his amethyst eyes. Kes had always been stubborn, but this was something more. This was a man who had found something worth fighting for, worth dying for. Captain, his weapons. Officer called out. The raiders are hailing us. On screen, the view screen split, showing both the human station and the scarred face of Captain Vrick, the Crimson Fleet's most notorious raider. His pale skin was marked with ritual scars, and his silver hair was woven with the bones of his victims. Well, Vrick said, his voice like grinding metal. Little Prince Kes, playing with primitives, and his big brother come to rescue him. How touching, Vrick, Joran said coldly. You are in violation of the Neutral Zone Treaty. Withdraw immediately. Vrick's laugh was like breaking glass. Treaties mean nothing out here. Captain, the prince has something that belongs to me, a very expensive piece of Zephyrian technology. I've come to collect it. The ship, Kes asked. The ship, the prince. And anyone who might have seen too much. Vrick's eyes shifted to the humans on screen. Can't have primitives spreading tales about Zephyrian weakness, can we? Nia stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. We're not primitives, and we're not afraid of you. Vrick's expression showed genuine surprise. The little human speaks. How delightful. I'll enjoy breaking that spirit before I space you. Joran saw red. The casual threat against the humans, against people his brother cared about, triggered something primal in his protective instincts. You will not touch them. Try to stop me, Captain. The connection terminated. Leaving the bridge in tense silence, Joran looked at the tactical display, calculating odds and possibilities. 6 raider ships against his single cruiser, with a civilian station to protect, and his brother's apparent bondmate in the line of fire. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, recommendations. Joran looked at the view screen, where Kes was holding Nia's hand with obvious tenderness, while Vera worked frantically at a console. His brother had found something worth protecting, something that had changed him profoundly in just a few days. Maybe it was time to trust that judgment. Signal the station, Joran said. Tell them we're going to make a stand here, together, and prepare to show the Crimson Fleet what happens when they threaten family. As alarms began blaring and his crew moved to battle stations, Joran found himself hoping that love really could be stronger than centuries of suspicion and fear. Because in the next few minutes, they were all going to find out